need to happen because $285, and you have trucks turning in there, you have oil equipment turning down that road, and sometimes it can be quite a chore to make that turn there. So we're mindful of what the problems are.
Just the one thing, Mill Road light is going in. It is funded. That's at Tractor Supply intersection. There will be a light there. The study has been done. It has been funded. I know the highway department is working with the railroad because it has to have the connection with the railroad crossing there, and that is working. I believe there's a new business going in out there close to Tractor Supply, so it's going to get busier, and it's a good thing. We need to slow that down right there. And if you notice that speed limit has gone down to 45 there, and I appreciated that.
One more thing. I know, Candy, you were affected, I think, the last time they had that flood through Roswell. We need to get federal money to help us out. This country is so generous to everyone except those who pay taxes.
Along the lines of the light at Mill, are there plans to put in a deceleration lane as well, or is that beyond the scope to turn?
It's my understanding that's being designed. I don't know where that is, but I think it had an accel and a decel lane and the light.
Great. Destiny has a question?
It is my understanding that this legislative session is budget related, correct? So I think we have seen in the last couple of years a large increase in funding, specifically to education, to our $30 million literacy center that we're building. And I think when we look at our scores statewide, I think a lot of people have a question like, what is that money doing? Because we see some of our schools don't have really great scores and aren't very proficient, specifically in the high schools. So are you all going to try to enact some type of, I guess, parameters or metrics for them to kind of start meeting so that we're not just endlessly funding things that maybe are not producing a result? Maybe not building another $30 million literacy center, or I don't know, $10 million to a clinic in Las Cruces or something.
Let me ask, since I went into the House of Representatives 10 years ago, our budget at that time was right at $6 billion a year. Over that time period, we've ramped that up to a little over $11 billion per year, with another 5% being projected for this budget cycle. Now, by a show of hands, can anyone tell me that they feel better off? Are they safer? Are they better educated? Is there any facet of state government that has improved their lives with all of those additional expenditures? Now, don't be bashful. If you feel like you're better off than you were 10 years ago for all of this extra expenditures, please raise your hand. Okay, could I have a little conversation about, please give her a microphone.
Yes, sir. What questions do you have?
Well, the question is, how do you feel that your life has been improved of about, what, $40 billion in total in taxpayer dollars?
Well, I work for the schools. And when I first started working for the schools, we were getting $5 a year raises. $5. That's it. Not $5 a month, not $5 an hour. We are now, last year I think we got a 4% raise. The year
And
before that was like 5. It's been percentages in the last, I want to say since 2019. 2019 we got a huge jump. Teachers got a significant pay raise. I mean like $15,000 difference from 10 years ago to today. Starting pay for a level 1 teacher when I started working for the schools was, I want to say 35. And now, not 15, $20,000 difference. Now a level 1 entry teacher will go in at $55,000. And my husband's retired military, and he is now a teacher. So both of us working for the schools has drastically helped us.
I will absolutely concede that point. We have raised teacher salaries significantly over that time period. However, that is only a fraction of the total expenditures.
And I totally understand it. You were asking directly if anyone's lives are better, and ours is significantly better than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah. Anyone? Yeah.
I serve on the Senate Education Committee. I also served whenever I was in the House, and I was in the House for 20 years. What was I thinking? But you know what? I do make a difference up there. And whenever I was in the House, serving on the House Education, I served there for 4 years before I made this transition to be in the Senate. I thought it was very, very interesting. We know where the money comes from that funds our state. It comes from this area of the state. It's the oil and gas is number 1 and agriculture number 2. Folks, we're doing it. And they don't seem to understand that we want our money accounted for and we want it to work for us. There's a book that comes out, and it's called Rich States, Poor States. And I was amazed whenever the first thing I turned to is education. And New Mexico ranks number 1 as far as putting dollars towards education. Number 1 in the nation. And thank God for Mississippi, y'all. For the longest time, they were below us. And all of a sudden, they changed up their way of teaching, and I think they jumped all the way up to 32. Something along those lines. I am going to be carrying a bill that is in line with what the White House has come out with. Let states run their own education system. I think it's very important that our children learn cursive writing, and I've been pushing that now for coming up on 6 years. They're not teaching cursive writing to our children. Can they read the Constitution of the United States? No, they can't. I'm real bothered by that. If they're not reading proficiently by the 3rd year, you don't pass them on. And I'm very adamant about that too. If they cannot read by the time they're finishing up the 3rd grade, how are they going to be a successful person in our state as far as the workforce goes? It's not going to happen. I do understand that not every kid needs to go on to college. We have a workforce out there that is desperately needing work. But they're still going to have to learn how to read. They're going to have to learn math. I don't know if you guys were as upset as I was whenever the governor disbanded the school board over there in a town. I'm not going to name the town's name, but disbanded that school board Floyd, well, I know what it was. Townsend said
She
it,
won't, but
okay?
he will.
But you know what? There's a lack of common sense right now with the Department of Education. Our small schools are the ones that are succeeding right now. And we see the problems that they have at the biggest school district in our state, and that is Albuquerque Public School Systems. We owe it to our kids to do better than what we have been giving them for the past, 20 plus years. I want every one of our kids to be successful, but to do that, it's also going to take the integral part in this is parental involvement in the success of their kids in our education system. That's just me. I am a product of Artesia Public Schools, and it was all based out of Cottonwood Elementary School, which is not there anymore. And I can still see all of my classmates from Cottonwood School, and every one of them successful, because every one of those kids I went to school with, their parents were involved. It didn't matter if they spoke English or Spanish. Their parents were involved, and that made all the difference in the world.
Destiny, to answer your question directly, this session is a budget session. This is not a session that you get to introduce that type of bill. But we have collectively been introducing measures to change the education system in New Mexico. Part of the challenge in New Mexico is there are so many school teachers in the legislature who come to the legislature from their respective bargaining units, and they are hardline about not changing anything in education. But with that said, I don't think communities like Artesia should blame Santa Fe for what goes on in Artesia. I think we have to be very active in our communities and with our own superintendents and with our own principals, and expect to see those grades published openly, and to see plans to address shortcomings within those. And at the same time, to give accolades to those schools that are doing really, really well. Because I think it's just as important to pat them on the back and to say thank you and to say good job as it is to throw rocks at them. So I would say that Santa Fe has its own problems, no doubt about it. The processes that are there need improving, but that we should not, as parents and as adults, pass the buck from being involved in our own schools. That's our job, and we should do that. And we have a great superintendent, we got a great school, but we still have children that deserve the best education they can, and we should be involved in their lives.
I'll add something just real simple back to it. Some of the things I've heard, I think there's got to be some accountability as well, right? Accountability to the students. Senator Zell spoke on that a little bit. We shouldn't just be passing them on, just to pass them on. I'm a product of that in Cloudcroft schools. I went to Cloudcroft for 14 years. So do the math, and I started in kindergarten, finished in 12. Second grade, I loved it so much I stayed twice. And so I saw my second grade teacher, and sure enough, she moved to fourth grade too. So I had her 3 times to get out of there. It was tough. Best teacher I ever had, but she held me accountable. In second grade, I was struggling. I couldn't spell. I don't know what happened because I still can't, but she held me accountable, kept me back in second grade, and I'm better for it. I think we can't be afraid to hold these kids accountable, and if they're not ready to go on and they're not ready for that next level, why are we passing them on to that next level and just kicking it down the road and let it be someone else's problem? Let's help address those problems. Let's help those kids where they're at. and make sure that if they can read, they can write, they can do arithmetic. Well, it's still important, and not just, oh, they'll catch it next year. Well, they might not. And so holding some kids accountable and keeping them back, it's not a bad thing. It worked out for me. I mean, I made it to the stage. I'm not sure what that says, but it was a good thing for me. And I appreciate my parents making that hard decision, holding me accountable, and I really, really appreciate, I'll call her out. If you ever know Miss Cooper, she is the greatest teacher in Cloudcroft, I think, that ever had. You know her. Wonderful lady that held us all accountable. Tough class to get through, but we're better for it.
Also, I agree with most of my constituents up here that the control of our schools has got to be local. We, as I said, we spend more money and get less results. But in our own school systems, in Artesia, Carlsbad, Lovington, Tatum, which are all in my district, all four of those school districts, we need to, the control has got to be local. Our school board members, y'all vote for them. If they don't do, it is, to me, one of the most important seats, positions in our country is our school board members. They're easy to get rid of if you don't like what they do, if they don't mirror your values for your kids, vote them out. If they do if they mirror your values, keep them in. I mean, it's pretty simple. We the people is the way our Constitution reads. We have the power if we will exercise our power. We vote terribly. Our school board election, I don't know what the last percentage was. Might have been 3. I don't want to say, but it's horrible. 20% maybe. I really don't know. I don't think it was that high, but I don't want to rag them too hard. But even on our coming up election this midterm next year, we'll be lucky if we have a 40% for voter turnout for the positions that we hold, which is horrible. You, the people, need to make sure that we, the representatives and senators, governors, school board members, county commissioners is another very important position. We need to be held accountable for our actions, and only you, the people, can hold us accountable. And we, as said, we, the people, also need to take, besides our voting, we need to take an interest in our schools. The deterioration of our family unit has been terrible in our country, and without the family involved in the child's education, it's tough for the teachers. The teachers are not our kids' mothers and daddies. They are their teachers. And we need to hold our teachers accountable, but we also need to hold our own children accountable. And with that, I'm off my soapbox, and we'll hand it back to Larry.
Okay. We have another question up here in the back from Janelle.
Hi, I'm Janelle Taylor. I work in nonprofit mental health care, and I noticed on the survey just now, it mentioned, a lot of people in the room are worried about health care. Something that came up last legislative session, and I understand House Bill 32 and 50 will be addressing the healthcare licensure compacts again. And I wanted to know what you guys think of that, because I know in my business, recruiting and getting people licensing can be quite difficult. And we know that there was great success. I believe we're in 1 of 10, which is the nursing, which I believe Senator Gay Kernan had a great hand in, and has had very positive things to say about how that has helped the state. And would love to see what you guys think about that, because I know from my position, if we could join those compacts, I really think it would make a huge difference in getting licensed professionals into these positions that we desperately need.
There were actually 3 of us on this stage, spent lunch today in Lovington with the Hospital Association. and passing legislation to enable that compact participation is very high on their list of accomplishments that they would like to have happen in this legislative session. The reason why more compacts have not been successful making it through the legislature up to now is that to date, the governing bodies of these compact associations have been, all the legislation that's come out of New Mexico would subject those governing bodies to New Mexico liability law. And that has been a non-starter with those governing organizations. I think universally, the folks sitting on this stage would stand in strong support of our being able to join those compacts. We just haven't been able to get it across the finish line.
You know, those compacts are critical to New Mexico, especially right now with the medical malpractice debacle that we have. So we have to get those across the line. I'm not for sure that we're going to get it done during this session. I've been told that the governor is going to message on that topic so it can be addressed. But even with that, I'm not for sure, because there's Katie Duhigg and some other attorneys that are serving the legislature that are adamantly opposed to it because they see it as restricting their ability to represent their clients who may have had a claim against a doctor or a hospital. So if it doesn't, I think there's a good shot that we'll have a special session solely to address medical malpractice. And with medical malpractice will come the compacts because they're hand in hand. But it's not, I mean, there's a number of those compacts. I mean, it's from dentals to nurse practitioners to, I mean, it goes on and on and on. Right now, you know, one of the things that we're fighting in our education system is we have retired teachers in New Mexico that we cannot hire to go back into a classroom and help, but we can hire a teacher from Texas to come to New Mexico to do it. I mean, it's ludicrous. But we have to get that straight, and part of that, one of the reasons I think we're going to be successful this year is, I don't know how much you guys watched last year, but New Mexico Oil and Gas, independent petroleum producers, and the Midland PBPA became very active in the legislature. There were a number of bills that were directly attacking the oil and gas industry. Mimi Stewart was carrying the biggest group of those. And those organizations went after. They started running ads on TVs. They started putting messages in districts. They were actively out knocking on doors saying, this is bad, don't let this go through. And they were successful. And I think you're going to see other organizations do that, because when one stands up and shows strength, it gives somebody else a little stamina, a little spine, and you're going to see that start working. But you've seen the doctors have been doing that, hospitals are doing that right now, and I think that collective effort is going to push those compacts through.
Anyone else want to comment on that?
I think most everything's been said, and Jim said it mostly. Until we can somehow address the tort reform or the liability issue in the state, it's an uphill battle. and one we've fought and fought, and the lawyers, trial lawyers have a very strong presence in our legislature. They pour, as Jim pointed out, these other groups, they have poured big money into this, into keeping these tort reforms, and until we do the same against them, which I'm with Jim. I really hope this is the year we get it done. It would be nice to see some reform in that so we can get our our health system back where people and our doctors and our nurses can come to New Mexico and make a good living and serve the citizens of our state. But the tort reform to me is the key to the whole issue, and hopefully what Jim says is true, and with the help of all, again, the people of the state of New Mexico, we can put enough pressure to get that done.
Do you have another question from the audience? Right here. Scott?
All right, good afternoon, or good evening. Thank you guys for being here. Legislators, I appreciate you coming forward. So I learned something tonight already. I didn't know there was a difference between this year's session and the regular session. So this being a budget session, my challenge to you is for next year. So you got 1 year, and here's my challenge. Scripture tells us that Proverbs 24:11 says to protect those being led away to slaughter. And it goes on to say after that, it says, you have no excuse for saying, I did not know, I did not know. Here's the issue. In this state, and I'll be honest, real quickly, side note, I did research before I got here. I know all the bills you guys put in the past 10 years at least, and God bless you for putting forward bills opposing abortion. Here's the deal. We can deal with budget, we can deal with lights, we can deal with every single thing else, but God will not bless this state until we deal with the fact that 50 to 60 children, preborn children, are murdered every single day in this state. Now, I know you're like John the Baptist, you're one crying out in the wilderness up there. I understand this. But here's my challenge to you. I believe it's time to stop trying to nip away at the edges of abortion. Stop trying to legislate how abortion's done, when abortion can be done, protecting this corner or that corner of it. I believe it is time that as a state, as a party, the Republican Party needs to stand forward and say at this juncture, we as a party stand completely against abortion, and that we will be willing to put forward a bill of equal protection. And if you don't understand what a bill of equal protection is, I can explain it, but that would be my question. Would any of you be willing to partner with myself, and I can bring in resources from all across the nation to fight and to make this an issue within this state, putting forth next year a bill of equal protection for against abortion?
Well, I'll be happy to address that. You haven't been watching too closely, Scott, because that's exactly what we have been doing. And we have been fighting abortion at every step for the last 10 years that I've been in the legislature. We have fought it tooth and toenail, and we haven't beat around the bush. What we have done is tried to get one bill that saved at least part of the children. And that's what we've been trying to do. We have fought it tooth and toenail, and I know there's been many, many nights, many tears shed, many long hours that we fought this hand in hand. And whether the party stands for this or the party stands for that, the people of New Mexico are the ones that have to stand.
I understand that.
Until you get enough people to vote for enough legislators that will go forward and address that issue in the manner that you want, you're not going to get any changes. A couple of years ago, I think it was maybe 3 years ago, we had a bill that I thought had a chance.
It was in, sorry, go ahead.
And was it in 21 or 20?
2023, John Block put forth a bill that eliminated some abortions, but not all. And in that, there was carve-outs for protection against, you know.
And it never is. It's always amazing to me that when you look at a bill like that, it wasn't perfect. But most things that happen in Santa Fe or Washington aren't perfect.
Absolutely.
But it was a manner to save part of the children. It wasn't perfect. I grant you, it wasn't what I would prefer. But in the end, people were attacked from both sides. The very conservative people said, "Oh, you're trying to kill a bunch of kids." No, we were trying to save a bunch of kids. And the people that were pro-abortion were saying, "Oh, you can't do that because you're restricting a woman's right to health care." You and I both know that's BS.
Bunk.
Yeah.
It's absolute nonsense. It's murder.
But what has to happen is people have to stand for their values. And regardless of whether we like it or not, what you see in Santa Fe today in the legislature is a group of people that represent the values of too many that don't agree with what you and I believe is right.
Absolutely. And like I said, I want to go back. I read the bills for the past 10 years today as I was doing my research, and I commend you for all the work you've done. And I don't doubt your heart in this matter whatsoever. This is my position on the situation. A Bill of Equal Protection, for those in the audience who may not know, applies the 14th Amendment to the unborn. It says that anything, if I murdered you, the same penalty for murdering a live person is the same penalty for murdering an unborn person. And putting forth that bill, I believe, is a statement that we're going to stand in a godly manner and say, God says this is murder, and all other else is capitulation. And you're right that if we use human reasoning that, well, if we put this bill forward, we might get it passed. But here's the deal I would say is this, that God rewards absolute faithfulness. God doesn't tell us to worry about the outcome. He tells us to worry about what our labors are. And so I would encourage you, if anyone wants to talk to me offline about it, I would love to bring forth resources. I think it's time for a bill of equal protection to be brought forth to New Mexico.
Anyone else? Ken?
I'd like to also make some comments here. I was furious whenever that abortion clinic was built in Las Cruces. That was taxpayers' dollars that went to build that facility. She spent $100 million.
It was $10 million was allotted for that building.
But there's going to be, I think it's already under progress. One in northern New Mexico, the exact location was not divulged to any of it prior to her getting the money to build this thing. I do not like our state being known as the abortion capital of the world or of the United States. Last year, there were more abortions performed than there were live children born in the state of New Mexico. And that sickens me. It really does. It also bothers me whenever all these protesters, and they come into my office, they yell, they scream, and everything else. But you know what? I don't care. Amen. I didn't invite them in.
Amen.
And whenever they said, but it's health care for the woman. Well, what about that unborn child? That's not health care. That's killing. It bothers me whenever doctors and nurses have to stand by because a woman can go in and request an abortion whenever labor starts. That's sickening. And whenever that doctor and the nurses, the attendants, have to stand there and watch that child lay on that table until they die, what is that doing to the mental well-being of that doctor and his staff? And it's sickening to me.
I saw your bills that you guys have put in about the protection of the born. Yeah.
We're trying, folks, but we have lots of problems up there with Planned Parenthood is one of them. Mm-hmm. And some of these bills that are being pushed through by the ultra far left, that a parent doesn't really have any say over their child. Mm-hmm. Wait just a minute. What's wrong with that picture?
Yeah.
Let's get faith back involved.
Amen.
Anyone else would like to comment?
I keep going back to the same thing. You know, my first session up there, I called Jim on this. We had an abortion bill. I can't remember exactly what it was. And I was struggling. You know, it was one of them you're talking about that was going to save probably half the babies. And I told him, I said, you know, I can't vote for anything that has anything to do with abortion. I go home, and those women at my church are going to crucify me if I vote for this bill. And he told me, and he may not remember it, but he said, would you like to save half the babies or none of the babies? And I realize what you're saying. I think we should save all of the babies. But the way our system's set up again, and y'all are going to get tired of me saying this, but until the people of New Mexico decide that they want it, then it's not going to happen. You know, it is, and I always quote it was Hillsdale College survey. In any given election, only half of the people that profess to be of Christian values in the United States and New Mexico, the whole country, even cast a vote in any given election. And the sad part, but beyond that, is only half of the eligible Christians are even registered to vote. So we need to go look in the mirror. I'm with you. I think, I mean, I don't know that much about these bills, but to some degree, we, in our position, are stuck with the system. And I don't know that I'd be the one to carry a bill like that. I mean, I would vote for it if it came to the floor, but its chances are, and I know God doesn't care what our chances are. Don't rag me on that now. But you know, we need to be somewhat realistic in our, and if we can save half of them this year, I'll be tickled. And then next year, we'll save half of them. And the year after that, maybe we can save, I mean, I'm afraid that we're not going to get 100% at one time, but dear God, if you can help us make it happen, I'm with you. But thank you for your question, and hopefully we can make some inroads on that position. But again, and you know, I don't want to beat up the people in this audience because this audience agrees with both of us.
That's right.
You know, and I believe that I say that in the state of New Mexico, we let the tail wag the dog. You know, we've got the 5% that are ruling the 95%. I know in my heart that even those in any county in the state of New Mexico, there's lots of good Christian people, but they will not. I don't know how we get them to rear up on their hind legs and say enough is enough, but that's what it's going to take, as you said.
Takes pulpits.
Do what?
It takes the pulpits.
Right.
If the pulpits aren't leading, then it's not going to happen. So you can guarantee it's happening from my area. One thing I'll leave you with, and then I'm done. I'll get out of your hair. You never hit a ball you never swing at.
Along the lines of protecting children, I wonder if you would speak to the issue of CYFD, which seems to be an ongoing issue that's always in the news and it's never good. Is there a move afoot to do any good with CYFD?
You want to go first? See, our CYFD program, I would tell you, of all of the departments that I've had the chance to watch and interact with in the state agencies, that is the one department that needs to be tore down to ground level. I mean, it needs to be completely revamped. I mean, they're so infiltrated with people that have very little ideological beliefs like many of the people in this room. We have kids that are sleeping in offices in Santa Fe and Albuquerque and Roswell. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, we have had kids that were in families that parents were known criminals, known drug users, and had historic, I mean, time after time where they had problems. And these children are continually put back in those families because the CYFD, the state believes that their job is to reunite that family. And in many cases, children have died because they were put back into families where they were mistreated and uncared for. It is just horrible. And they come up with some of the dumbest things. I mean, if you've been watching the new child care issue that's going on, you know, last year the governor said everybody got free child care and took off all the salary requirements. It didn't make any difference whether you made $5,000 or $5 million, you got free child care. Well, child care facilities have been overrun because there's not enough providers. So now they're saying that John could become a child care provider, but he can only take care of 6 children. And he gets $1,900 a month for each of those 6 children. No, $1,900 for each one of those children. And so Rebecca Dow last week in committee asked the question and proposed the synopsis. She said, I have 4 children and I work. Could my neighbor that lives next door take care of my kids, and would she get $1,900 a piece for those? And the lady said, yeah, that's what it's about, taking care of your kids so you can go to work. And she says, well, she has 3 kids. And you said only 6, but so she has 3 kids. Could she farm her 3 kids off to her neighbor on the other side and her neighbor take care of those? And the lady said, yeah, I guess that could happen. I mean, this is going to look like Wisconsin, Minnesota in a week. I mean, this place will be so corrupt. I mean, everybody in town will be a child care provider. And that's the kind of solutions that they came up with. I mean, it's crazy.
Now, Senator, the one thing you left out of that conversation is they only have to swap every 15 days for a day.
Can you believe that? So that's what we're up against. Yes, ma'am, raise your hand.
Well, I want to know how that person's getting $1,900 a kid, because we're foster parents, and our registered home provider is only getting $425 for our baby, who is in foster care right now. And that was one of the things that I was going to bring up, that, yeah, you know, we want to be pro-life, but what about the kids that are living? And CYFD does have office stays, and from our experience and everything that we've been told, it's more of a lack of resource parents. You know, we've been called several times. The other night I got called, it was like 11:40 at night, and they wanted to bring us 2 kids from Albuquerque. He and I are not equipped to handle kids with violent behaviors. We're not. We have our own daughter, we have our baby, and we have our dogs in the house, and we've attempted to take in kids with behaviors, and it blew up in our face, and it became very dangerous, to where we've had to limit who we can take in. And it's heartbreaking because those 2 kids ended up becoming office stays for the night because we said no, and other people have said no because of those behaviors. So the lack of resource parents is probably one of the bigger problems. And the fact that CYFD is so understaffed, the state just put in a whole bunch of money for a CYFD watchdog group, a contractor, right? We put that money into more staffing. If there were more staffing and the work was spread out, burnout would be less, turnover would be less. You wouldn't have one person that has their own children at home having to stay at the office for their 12-hour shift, because that's what's happening. And we were told that there's a home in Las Cruces and I want to say Albuquerque that it's the CYFD office, but they have staffing that only does in-office stays. So they don't require the social workers or the permanency workers to do these shifts. It's people this is their job, that those shifts, taking care of the kids that for unfortunate reasons have to stay there. And it's for a lack of resource parents and a lack of training for those level 2s, because it's hard. We were not prepared for what we signed on for in that instance. And it has terrified us to take any other kids in. And it's hard and it's heartbreaking because we have to make that decision. Who do we protect? The kids that we have at home or the kids that need protection right now? What do we do? And it's so, so difficult. It's not just that black and white picture of CYFD isn't doing enough, because CYFD is a system put in place to pick up broken pieces. They're not in place to hold pieces together. They're there to pick up broken pieces. And I agree, reunification is the dumbest idea. And we have fought that, and fortunately we've been in a position where it's worked out in our favor. But that's not always the case. And it is frustrating when parents get chance after chance after chance after chance, and all of this time happens and bonding happens with that kid, and then everybody loses, because not everybody loses. There's just so many gray areas to that reunification, to the not reunification. Everybody's losing all the way around. There's just brokenness all the way around. And that's so hard to overcome with a department that's underfunded, understaffed, and under-resourced.
Well, thank you for being a foster parent, and I mean that. More kids with more needs than we have available families for them to go in. And we certainly have more kids with all sorts of issues. And I think you did the right thing. You got to protect what's in your house and your kids and your family. That's what you have to do.
It's heartbreaking to make that decision.
So let me add two things, like what she said when we failed before. Well, like we said, we have dogs. They, of course, did not inform us that these children had issues with animals. Lo and behold, we figured that out a couple of days into it. And then my other thing about resource parents, initially, they denied us because I had served in the military. And they said, well, we hadn't been together. Well, yeah, I was deployed in Kuwait and Jordan. Unfortunately, my family's not going to come to Kuwait and Jordan. And they said, well, you have PTSD. I'm like, yes. I did 2 tours in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan. Of course I have PTSD. Anybody who served in a combat zone has those. So I would ask that you look at those services as well.
We even on that note, we told them, isn't it a testament, us maintaining 2 households all of these years, a testament to that we're committed to each other and to our kids? I know we still got denied. It took a year for the whole process to be complete. Quit. Yeah, we almost quit. But it took a year for it to end with our approval. But it was strenuous. And then, well, I won't get into the rest of it, but it's a lot of, it's understaffed and under-resourced and underfunded. And then I had another question to circle back, Senator Townsend. You made a comment about that we can't hire retired teachers. What did you mean by that? Because we hire retired teachers all the time.
Well, today there's a lady sitting in the audience who's had a business for years of hiring teachers, retired teachers, that go back into classrooms to help teachers.
Yes.
And helping hands.
By your side.
By your side. And that has been stopped. Unless those teachers come outside of New Mexico. They can't, if they retired from New Mexico and were paying into, they cannot be rehired to go back into the classroom.
For 90 days. There's a 90-day sit-out.
No, ma'am.
Yes.
No, ma'am. They cannot be rehired.
We hire them all the time. There's a 90-day
And you
sit-out.
And who's hiring them?
Our Artesia Public Schools. There's a 90-day sit-out. You have to be out of the public education, New Mexico public education employment for 90 days, consecutive days. From the last day you receive a paycheck from a
Contract.
public ed,
Okay.
and then at 90 days, you can apply for what is called the 90-day return to work, and you can come back for 5 years as of right now. There's also a 0.25 FTE, I believe, where if you come back immediately, as long as you're 25% of full-time, you can come back with no limits.
Well, there's a lady right behind you fixing to explain that to you.
I'm Donna. I have by your side, and what the issue is it's a return to work. You can go back as an employee of the district, as a retired teacher after the 90 days, pay back into the retirement fund, right? What we're trying to do is take retired teachers that don't want to be employed by districts independently. They are retired teachers that work in several districts, so they can't go back as a return to work. So independent contractor status, which has always been the other option instead of return to work, is what is now being denied to all retired New Mexico teachers, superintendents, anyone that wants to go back in and volunteer or work in the districts, not as an employee, but as an independent contractor.
Right, and that, yeah, but we do hire retired teachers all the time.
Right, if they
So
return to work.
independent contractor, that's not part of the public education employment. So maybe there needs to be some clarification, because when you say right off bat, a teacher can't come back to work, that's not at all true. They can. It's a very, very easy process.
They can go back to work as an employee.
Right.
Only, not as a retired teacher trying to go back in and contribute to the districts as an independent contractor.
Do we have any questions on another topic? Anything? Nothing? I know there's some out there. I would like to bring up juvenile justice reform. I know that's been another really big topic. I think our superintendent has some concerns about students who are on suspension or maybe expelled from the school system and are now on the street and becoming a city problem because they are committing crimes. I know that juvenile justice is a huge topic, and there's always talk about reform, but where are we on that? Is there any hope?
You're right, it is a big problem. Our police chief will tell you that there is a small group that is constantly in trouble. We don't have juvenile detention facilities like we used to have, which would allow those children to be held in confinement. The issue has grown, and it's more than just in Artesia, and I don't believe it's Artesia, Albuquerque, Roswell. I mean, it happens all over. We have to get this revolving door issue stopped, to where children are held accountable for their actions. And quite frankly, parents are to be held accountable for their child's actions. But the ever police chief, Chief Story, who's over in Las Cruces, has testified to the problem. The Albuquerque police chief has testified to the problem. It's a problem that the legislature has failed to address. We've talked about it on more than one occasion, but it's hard for the legislature to, it has been very hard for the legislature to come back and say punitive incarceration for actions is a viable opportunity. But every one of those police chiefs says in order to protect families and to protect children in classrooms, sometimes those kids need to be removed, and they need to be removed until they get their act together. And we just haven't done it as a state. We just want to turn them loose and turn them back in, and that's what happens.
The prevailing opinion with our very progressive legislature is that it's not the individual kid's fault for getting into trouble. It's society's fault. That is, there is always an excuse for the bad behavior. It might be a poor home environment. It might be a poor school environment. It might be drug abuse, but it's never within the purview of our legislature to hold those kids accountable. And that's the opinion that has to change before we can address juvenile criminals. Now, it doesn't stop with just juveniles. I don't know if any of you have tried to buy a tube of toothpaste down along Central Avenue in Albuquerque, but they're locked up. The catch and release mentality is just pervasive in the state. And that, again, will only be changed along with a lot of our other ill-conceived public policy, can only be changed at the ballot box.
I'd also like to comment on that. Yes, something has to be done. And if it goes back to the education, it goes back to CYFD, it lies on the backs of the parents. I will agree to that. But I wasn't an angel growing up. My children weren't either. But you know what? We suffer the repercussions if we did wrong. And so there's a lack of not being held accountable. Many years ago, whenever I was a sophomore, I'll put it this way, a sophomore representative, I got a call from a lady that I had knocked on her door. She lived over in the east side of Roswell, and she said, we have a problem. Her granddaughter, who was 13 at the time that all this took place, had been kidnapped and raped, okay? There were 4 guys that were involved. They tried them, they were found guilty. The young lady was she did not like to sit any place except with her back against the wall, okay? She needed to be on the lookout, and I don't blame her for that. She was going to starting high school. That day that they went in for the first day of classes, homeroom classes, one of those guys was in her homeroom class. And the girl became hysterical. The teacher took the young lady down to the principal's office, and he said, there's not a problem. If you have a problem, you need to leave. I found out about it, and let me tell you what. That particular principal didn't have a job very long because I got my other legislators involved. The reason he was in her classroom, the rest of them were over the age of 18, but this one younger guy was still considered a juvenile. What's wrong with this picture, folks? We have to have judges that will uphold the law. We have to have parents that will take responsibility for their kids' action. And those kids have to face the repercussions of it too. And I'll tell you what, it's not going to get better. It is only going to get worse until people start being responsible for their children, until the kids are being held responsible for their actions as well. But we have a legislative body that will not blame those kids. It's not their fault. Hell, yes, it is. Yes, it is. They went out with the intent to steal a car. They went out with the intent of stealing a car, and let's see if we can bump that guy on that bicycle. Oh, we're so sorry we killed him. We're sorry. That happened not too long ago. It made headlines across the state. We have to put blame where blame belongs. That's just my thoughts.
I'll add just a little bit onto that. If y'all remember in the last session, I found it pretty interesting. We were debating a bill. Andy Reeve and Nicole Chavez, representatives, do a great job for us on the crime packages. They understand it, and they really carry a lot of those bills for us. So we're almost at the end of the debate, and I heard something. I said, it didn't make sense to me. So I stood up to ask the question to make sure I heard what I heard. And unfortunately, I did. I said, so are you telling me that when this juvenile gets out of jail at 21, whether they did murder, rape, a lot of heinous crimes that can be committed, we're going to give them a scholarship to go to college? Well, yeah. And then we're going to give them, I think it's $2,500 for rent? Well, yeah. So we're giving a homicide scholarship. That's what Representative Montoya labeled it at that point. So we're rewarding kids for bad behavior. So we've got youth, some sitting in this room, my kids worked really, really hard, got good grades, did the right thing, graduated, worked hard to get their scholarships so they could go to college, and did all the right things. But then we're rewarding kids in the state of New Mexico for committing major crimes because we don't want to hurt their feelings. It's interesting because if you know Representative Chavez, if you don't, look her up. She's got an interesting story. Her kid was actually murdered, and that's why she's so passionate about this. I recommend y'all go look at her story and understand why she's so interested in making sure that youth are held accountable. Because basically what they're telling our chief police, and you can see it, again, Representative Reed's posted quite a bit on it lately, in the Clovis area, these kids are doing whatever they want, basically telling the police, what you gonna do? There's nothing you can do about it because we're gonna get right back on the street the next day. Senator Zell was 100% correct. There is no ramifications for their actions, and until we start doing that, and I know that's a big point, we carried a lot of juvenile justice last year, crime bills. Actually, quite a few of us on the House floor did not vote for the crime package because we were told, oh, if you do this, we'll bring more later. They never came later, and we knew that. So I don't want to vote for a crime package that really wasn't a crime package. It was a feel-good. I wanted a crime package. I want to hold people accountable, and when they're doing things to folks, they need to be held accountable for it. So not only are we not holding them accountable, we're rewarding them for doing these things.
We have a question or a comment over here.
Hi, how you doing? Chris Gallegos. So there's something called the social contract that we all learn about in civics class and all that stuff, and I'd venture to say that everybody in this room is aware of the social contract. That's why we're all here, right? We all abide by the rules, we play by the rules, and we understand that by doing that, we can be successful American citizens, whatever. But that being said, we hear about accountability. We hear about social issues, and I'd venture even to say cultural issues. So my question to you guys, and it's a loaded question, and I apologize for that. What's happening to change that culture? What's happening to change those social issues that are being arisen that are arising that lead to juvenile crime, mental crime? All of these things that we know are all issues, but no one is willing to really tackle.
would it be safe to say that our public policy over the last 70 years has contributed to the disintegration of the traditional nuclear family?
100%.
That public policy is what has to change to turn things around.
And I would venture to say that everybody in this room understands that. But we're not the ones that need to be hearing that. It's the rest of the state.
I mean, I think as you have watched over the last year with Charlie Kirk and his death on TV, you've watched the swell of those organizations grow in many places. I was astounded. John Henry and I on Constitution Day, spoke to Artesia High School, and I think we gave out like 850 constitutions. I was amazed at the quality of questions that came from our students in our classrooms about in-depth, real life issues. I mean, I believe kids are coming around, and I think it's an indication that families are coming around. I think it's a bigger indication that God's coming around. When you see that action, and it wasn't just in Artesia. I mean, I watched the Charlie Kirk issue. I was in Madison, Wisconsin when that happened. But I mean, it's kind of lit a fire in this nation. I think you've seen conservative people, stood up for Trump. They don't like everything that he says, but they like what he causes to occur, and they see family values being raised. They see real right and wrong issues coming around. So I was really encouraged, and I am encouraged that we're making a turn in the nation. And I think when we make that turn, you'll see that reflected in your legislature and in the people you elect and the people that go forward to run for office. But I think it starts in the heart. I think it starts around the dinner table. It starts in Sunday school. It starts in places where values are born. I don't think you can put it off on teachers to do. I think teachers can fortify it. They can work on it. I think, but I am encouraged that things are turning around. Maybe I'm just wishful thinking, but I know there are areas where it doesn't. But I do believe it's turning around.
I'll amen that for sure, that I think it's turning around. We, as individuals in this room, and especially for us five sitting on this stage, we need to make sure that we are the examples of what we want to happen. I've told several, one of the big things for me, and no disrespect to anybody, but I don't like being called a politician. I'm a representative of my district, not a politician, is the way I like to look at myself. it hurts me that we, as leaders of our country and our state and our cities, have lost the respect of the citizens of the country. Me and my wife had the conversation coming back from our little ranch the other day. You know, it is horrible, horrible to listen to a lot of our leaders of this country, especially different senators on the national level and stuff, and the language that they use in their speeches, in their talks to people. It is, I mean, it's, my mother would run out of soap fast, washing their mouths out. I mean, it is, but, you know, it is horrible, and it is our job to regain the respect of each other. We all do things, you know, we're not perfect individuals, we're not perfect people, we all fall short of the glory of God. But we need to do the best we can, and we need to project our values in what we do and what we expect others to do. And as I've said, and every time I've picked up this mic, it is up to us as citizens of Artesia, of New Mexico, of the United States, to involve everyone we know to make sure that you vote for people that mirror your values. If I don't mirror your values, you should not vote for me. You should find somebody else to vote for. I mean, I can tell you I'm going to do this, and I can tell you I'm going to do that, but you can look at what I do, not what I say, to know what is going to happen. And we need, and I'm with Jim, I think, and everyone else on the stage, I really think that we see a turning in this nation and in our, I wish I could say as much in our state as I know as a nation we see a resurgence of values. And we do need, as Candy said, we need to make sure that we are accountable for our actions, besides wanting other people to be accountable for their actions. My dad used to say, do the crime, you do the time. You know, I mean, if you do something wrong, you should be willing to suffer the consequences. And if you don't want to suffer the consequences, don't do the crime. But hopefully we see this movement back to families, back to God, back to respect for each other to grow and grow and grow in this country. And with that, all our other problems will soon go away. And now I'll ask for the preacher to come back up here, I guess.
Representative Henry?
I'll say very quickly, what the senator said is really absolute correct. I mean, I was very excited to be at the high school that day, pretty much all day. The questions that were asked, I think the youth are sick and tired of the nonsense now. I think the pendulum has swung back the other way to where they want some accountability to some of their peers. When I said accountability earlier, it's not just to make the grades to go on. You should be held accountable to show up to school. You should be held accountable to act right while you're in school. If you can't act right, you shouldn't be in school. But we don't do that anymore. I shouldn't say our generation, because we saw up there's a lot of different generations. I'm going to be very nice.
Yeah, we were born last century, okay?
I was going to start out differently in the 70s, but I wasn't alive. So, but I do think you're seeing the youth ready for that. My kids are in college. During the Charlie Kirk, I was interested. Now, granted, it's a Christian college, so maybe it's a little skewed, I guess. But it was interesting to see how many, my daughter called the devastation that they felt on the campus for a voice being taken away that they were rallying behind. I think what's important to remember is a lot of times we look towards public servants. I'm with Representative Mason. I never will be a politician, I hope. I think we're all public servants that happen to be in politics. If you're looking for us for answers, y'all are all in trouble. we do what we can, but I think you look to the church, you look to the folks of the community. That's why I love this community so often. As a community, we rally around FFA, the teams, the 4-H. It's not just the sports folks that we show up for. I mean, my goodness, go to the band competition that's here. The place is packed. We, as multiple generations, have to continue to plug into those kids and make sure their voices are heard. I think that's the most crucial piece that I learned that day, is they're sick and tired. And I think COVID, as bad as it was the biggest help for us. They're sick and tired of their voices not being heard, and they're being pushed aside, and they're ready to speak, and it's time to start listening. And I think they want that accountability. My son did. I want him to have to turn in his homework, and when he was told, I'll just turn it in next week, I said, no, call her and tell her you got a 0, buddy. You didn't turn it in. And the more we did it, guess what he did the next day? He turned his next assignment in because he didn't want another 0. They want it. They're begging for it. We've got to do it. I agree with you. It starts with faith and then family, and as long as we get those right, politics, we can solves itself, and we can argue all you want, but that's the piece. If we don't start to get that right, and we don't start listening to these youth who are screaming as loud as they can for us to hear their voice, we've got to start listening. That's just my thought.
I am not a politician. I'm a farmer and a rancher, and I'm proud of that fact, okay? I am the people's voice up there, and I do speak loud sometimes. I've been told I scare people, but they can just get over it, okay?
Mostly her brothers.
How many of y'all have ever heard a parent tell their kid, if you don't stop that by the time I count to 3, I'm going to do something, and nothing ever happens? How many of y'all have heard that? I've heard that many times at the grocery store, in church, you name it. Public places. You know what? Kids need boundaries set. That's all there is to it. If they don't comply, parents, be a parent. You're not their best friend. You're the parent. Act like one. My mother used to get on to me because my kids, this sounds funny, they used to bring home strays, okay? And I'm not talking about animals. We lived 26 miles from Artesia High School. And if there was a kid that might be getting into some problems, they'd bring him out there. Can they spend the weekend here? And I said, yep, but the first thing I'm doing is calling their parents, letting them know where they are, because they will not go back into town while they're out here. I'll put them back on the bus Monday morning. And we would have a talk. I feel like Mayor Henry, Representative Henry, I'll put a slash in there, okay? Whenever you have kids that are involved in certain activities that are overseen by people that are wanting to make a difference in that kid's life, it does matter. First and foremost, it falls back on the parents. If there's issues going on in the parent's life, sometimes it's up to us to step in, to kind of keep holding it together until they're back on track too. But boundaries have to be set, and kids have to be held accountable. But I do see that pendulum swinging the other way too. These kids that are coming up, it does my heart good whenever we're up there in session and I see all these green coats go walking through by these kids that are involved in 4-H, or blue coats come walking through because all of these kids are involved in FFA. I see lots of classrooms coming up there, and these kids sincerely want to know what's going on in our capital that's going to affect them on down the line. And I love for them to come into our committee meetings, especially the Conservation Committee and the Education Committee, because conservation is going to help pay for that education they're going to get. So maybe y'all need to make a trip up to Santa Fe and come visit us while we're up there, okay, to see what we're actually trying to get done. And if you see that we are not holding up, tell us about it. We need to hear from y'all. That's why we're here tonight, to find out what the concerns are. Don't ever be afraid to call any of us.
I spent a lot of time with numbers. I have a reputation of having a calculator in both hip pockets in the legislature. Now, I know what I'm about to say is going to sound harsh. But in 1960-ish, approximately 25% of the children born to a single mother in the black communities, 25% of the kids born were born to a single mother in the black communities. 70 years later, with the Great Society programs in place that whole time period, that number today is approximately 70%. Now, this country is rich, it is prosperous, and it is generous. A single mother with 2 children and 1 minimum wage job in this state, participating in all of the public assistance programs that are available to her, has an equivalent revenue stream of about $100,000 a year. What we have done with our public policy is created intergenerational dependence on our very generous public assistance programs. And as a consequence, we've removed the incentive to work, and we have removed the incentive to maintain 2 parents in the household. That policy, as harsh as it may sound, to make those changes, is what we have to come to grips with in order for this to fully turn around.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? I'll just ask one question. This is a budget year. We have oil prices are down. Looks like projections for an increase in budget is the talk. And I'll make this the last question. What about that? Is somebody looking forward to the potential for less revenue to spend, but more fun things to buy or pay for?
Sure, they have to. I think last year we based our revenue on $63 crude. So we hedged a little bit on that. Today it's below that. I forget that for every dollar crude moves, it's about $15 million, I think, to the budget, and for every dime natural gas moves, it's a little more than that. So when gas and oil move in New Mexico, it's a big deal. There's only 5 counties in the state that pay in more to the general fund than they take out. Out of 33 counties, only 5 pay in more. Eddy, Lee, Sandoval, Bernalillo, and Los Alamos. and everybody else is taking more out than they're putting in. So when you have that happen, even a guy with 2 calculators in his back pocket can figure out you're in trouble pretty quick. And so the budget will have to be, I mean, right now, the governor wanted about $500 million more in her proposed budget than LFC came forward with. Most of that's on child care. So, yeah, people are watching it, and they'll continue to watch it, and we have the duty to balance it, so we can't leave until we get it balanced.
Any other comments? Any other last words before we wrap it up here?
I'll say one last quick word. I'm really glad to see so many folks here tonight, so many folks watching online. The one thing I would ask everybody is please pay attention to what's going on in Santa Fe. One of the things I found interesting, disheartening, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. The last session, we'd been up there for, 45 days at this point, whatever, been there forever. It feels like the entire state of New Mexico is watching every single thing we do, say. That's what it felt like to me, right? I was a freshman. I'm thinking all of y'all are hanging on every word that we're saying in session. And Artesia happened to be in the state championship. I got my committee ended early, so I ran down to the Albuquerque to go watch the game. And I ran into some Artesia folks, and they said, "Hey, what are you doing up here?" I said, "Well, we're at session." And they said, "That's now?" And I'm like, that's where I've been for 45 days. So glad I was missed.
Nobody noticed you were gone.
Nobody noticed I was gone. So it's really important. We think everybody's paying attention. We're trying to put information out, but we need help. It's so nice when somebody shoots a text, especially if we're debating a bill or they see a bad bill. I mean, there's hundreds of bills that are going through. We're not experts in everything. We try to know as much as we can, but you guys have expertise in something that might help us. And so just that interaction, that engagement, even if you don't care about the bills at the moment and you just text us and say, "Are you guys okay?" That's all right too. But it does mean a lot to us to have that interaction, and we need the help. As you've heard tonight, I mean, I think on our side we're outnumbered quite a bit on both sides. We work as hard as we possibly can. We have great success in committees, which is exciting sometimes. Once it gets to the floor, we're in a little bit of trouble because it's so overwhelmingly, the numbers are against us. But having y'all show up, call in, send us a note so that I can say, I've got a constituent that says this. All those things help us. But at least, I'm hoping because y'all are here, we leave on Saturday, we'll be gone. So if you don't see us, that's where we'll be. We'll be in session. And I appreciate the engagement because it's important to us. And like I said, being a dumb freshman, I thought everybody in the state was watching us. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm in session. They're like, oh, that's now? And then I do want a quick shout out to Morgan, Haley, everybody on setting the stage. I know Lori and Vicki got here early. Setting the stage up, everyone else that I missed, Jessica, that's why I shouldn't have said a name because now I'll miss somebody. But it looks great. I really appreciate it. And thank y'all for engaging with us tonight.
Representative Mason.
Thank you, Haley. Just before we leave, I'd like to thank everyone that's here and how much we appreciate the communities that we serve. Some of the people we serve with in Senate or in the House, I serve with in the House, but serve in the state legislature, talk these kind of events they have, the people that are irate and they holler and they scream and they beat up their representatives for this and the other. Here, it's humbling the amount of respect and support that we get from all of our communities down here. You know, I'm very accessible. You know, I have a business here. I see people every day. You know, people may say, well, what are y'all doing? You know, but nothing, I can't say one time that I've been approached in a hostile manner. They may wonder what's going on, and they this, that, and the other, and they ask, but nearly 90% of them say when they're leaving, we appreciate you being there. And it's very humbling from our position, the support that we get. And I know that all of the representatives and senators across the state do not receive the support that we do, and I want y'all to know that we greatly appreciate it. And the best thing is, the text and all of that help. But if it's a bill you're really interested in, get in your car and come up there and sit in that committee where other people on the committee have to look you in the eye and say what they say, knowing that somebody's there that opposes their position. There's nothing better than eye-to-eye contact in a conversation. It's so much better than a text. You can turn your computer off. You can turn it's not personal. Personal involvement is a lot on some of these really hard bills, as abortion and the CYFD, the really hard conversations. The more physical support we can have in our committees, the better it is. And I think, again, thank y'all, and God bless you all.
Senator Scott?
The only people we see in our committee rooms are community organizers from Santa Fe, Espanola, and Albuquerque. The conservative voices, the voices that might bring adults to the room, the voices that might bring some reason to the argument, I think are all back home working. And that's, I think, part of the problem and part of the results that we get in Santa Fe. Ladies and gentlemen, I can assure you that if you gave this group and a governor 2 years in power, we could solve some of the problems, maybe a lot of the problems that face our state. We are not, I've heard this over and over and over again, we're a poor state. That is absolutely incorrect. We are an incredibly wealthy state. What we've got is poor leadership. And we've had it now for the last 8-10 years that I've been in the legislature. And we're going to keep getting it until we can turn via the ballot box the Rio Grande corridor to a more conservative mindset. I don't know how to get there, but that's what we have to do.
I won't disagree with what Senator Scott just said. That is, 22 years ago, my first interim committee meeting, it was Health and Human Suffering is what I always called it. That was the interim committee. And boy, it was bad because all I heard was New Mexico is a poor state, and no, we're not a poor state. You have people kind of hoodwinked by some people that say, we will help you, here's your handouts. Well, when's the handouts going to stop that you and I are paying for? Okay, if there's an able-bodied person out there, I feel like they need to be out there working. I think we're going to see some changes in the SNAP program. There better be some changes in the SNAP program. It's so refreshing whenever we do have people from home coming up. And you need to sit in the committees, and you need to dispute what these people are spouting off, because they're not in tune to the real world. They like to go to their office and put their blinders on. They need to know what the rest of the country is doing so that they can get their brand new roads, their brand new bridges, their new schools, their new hospitals, their new police stations, their new libraries, everything else that we have to pay for. Folks, get involved. That's what we're asking here. One other thing I am going to say is thank y'all for coming out tonight. I pray that God watch over you, your family, our state, and God bless the United States of America.
Senator Townsend.
Yeah, thanks, and thank y'all for coming. You know, I think the legislature has made some headway. For years, there were some that tried to hire and were promoting hiring more staff for legislators. I fought it tooth and toenail. It was one of the biggest mistakes. I think I did, and I think many of us fought it. But since then, this last year, we've hired, each legislature has been able to hire a legislative assistant. We have Morgan, we have Lori Black in the back. I mean, there's others here. Stephanie was here earlier. I don't know who.
Hired a redhead.
2 redheads, that's too many. But it's made a really big difference. I mean, we have offices. I have an office now in the Petroleum Building here. John and I share one there, and then we share one over in the Ink Spot in Alamogordo. But it has added a dynamic that has been well received. In our case, we hired 2 gals that were probably better suited to do the job than we were. And they have been out in the community working hard. And they're another connection to the community that allows the community to put their 2 cents back into the system. And it's been good. It's been really good. So I appreciate that, and I think I know my wife really does, because she's been on the payroll for a long time and she had never got a paycheck. And so she's really looked forward to it. But I do appreciate you guys coming out tonight. I hope it's been worth your time. It's been worth ours to listen, and that's what it's all about. It's an honor to represent you. It's a duty that we do because we feel like we are supposed to do it. I don't think anybody serves in the legislature that at some point in the time, usually it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when you're sitting there arguing about something that you don't care about, that you realize you're there for a reason. And whether it's something that causes lots of gnashing of teeth, whether it's an abortion issue that's I mean, you can't imagine the emotions that flow on something like that, the death penalty. There's all sorts of issues that really, I mean, they cause a lot of emotions, but you see people's real heart. And it's at those times that you realize that it's not an accident that you're there, but you also feel and everybody does it, I promise you, every one of us feels that burden to do it right. So we appreciate you guys immensely. We appreciate the communities. I just ask you, when you see good things going on in your community, support them, whether it's 4-H, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, whatever. They don't happen without somebody supporting them. So go support them, and collectively, together, we can make it a better world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Just a few things I wanted to remind you of. There is a contact sheet floating around here. If you didn't get one, it'll help you know how to get a hold of your legislators. And are the DLAs on there too? Okay, so the district legislative aides, don't forget about them. They're a great resource for information and to get in touch with your legislators. I wanted to ask where you get rich states, poor states. How can people get a hold of that?
They can usually get on the internet and just.
You just order.
It's American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC.
ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council. If you're interested in looking at rich states, poor states, it comes out every year, doesn't it?
Every
Yeah.
year.
Okay.
It's a great book.
Okay, perfect. If you didn't get a contact sheet tonight and don't know where to find one, will there be some at the chamber? Oh, sure. Okay. Yes, that means yes. Okay. And then don't forget that elections are coming up. So local elections in Artesia are this March 3rd, and where if you live in the city limits, you'll be voting on city councilors and in the mayor's race. That's really important. It starts at the local level. In June, we'll have primaries. And of course in November. So get engaged this year, pay attention to the candidates out there, and mostly just get out there and vote. It starts right here. And if you need help, call the chamber. They'll be happy to help you. Yeah, call those girls. Yeah, they'll help you find your way. You can register to vote there, change your voter registration if you need to update an address or anything like that. And or if you need contact information or need to know something about the session that's going on, they'll be a great resource, as will the DLAs. So again, I want to thank you all for coming. This was a great turnout. And
Oh, wait, sorry.
yes, one more second. Also, there will be an event for, I suspect, for local candidates coming up in February. Don't know the date yet for sure, but pay attention to that. We'll do something probably here at the Ocotillo, I'm guessing, for local candidates. So look for that information coming up. The chamber will be hosting that. So, and Scott would like to end with a prayer.
Oh, wait, Scott, can I say one more thing first?
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, thank you guys so much for coming. I'm going to take off my DLA hat, and I'm just Morgan. And I just wanted to say that there's a lot of big problems in New Mexico, but they're not as big as all of your hearts. So we appreciate you representing us. Oh, yes. I was thinking of that for a long time.
She's about to cry, you guys.
I'll cry. I'll get so touched. But really, I appreciate your grit, and what I like hearing the most is your hope for our state and that you believe it can be better. And that's what we need in our legislators. So thank you. Also, this is not me in my job. This is just me as a person. Representative Henry has a petition to get his name on the ballot so I can keep my job for the next 2 years. So if you could please sign that, that would be fantastic. All right. Take it away, Scott.
Thank you.
Oh, so does Jimmy. So if you can sign the petition, that means they get their name on the ballot, and then that's step one. There's still a lot of steps to go.
Sign all those petitions.
You can find it on the New Mexico Secretary of State, or you can get a hold of one of us, and we'll help you sign it.
All right. Bow your heads with me, please. Holy God, Father, Son, and Spirit, we know that the daily working out of this world is done in and according to your perfect triune will. But our feeble minds and hearts ache at seeking to understand the ever ongoing strife that plagues our world around us. We ask of you now to not only give us strength and wisdom to handle all that comes our way, but we beg of you, intercede in a grand way. Bring repentance to the land, foil the efforts of your enemies as they seek to undermine you and your people, and deliver unto your people the great promises of the gospel going forward into the world in a mighty and miraculous way. And Lord, we now commend all of these legislators to you as they go forth to do mighty, mighty work, Lord, that you give them strength, that you carry them through night and day, every single moment that they have to struggle to fight for your will to be done in this state, Lord. And we just ask that as the people here, that we provide prayers and constant support to them day in and day out as they go forth to represent us. We thank you, Lord, for this gathering. We ask that you give everyone safe travels home, our legislators safe travel to Santa Fe, and watch over them and their families as they do your work. And we pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming, and thank you all for representing us.